Greetings, friends, fellow citizens, fellow patriots, and even non-citizens, and welcome to this week's edition of the We the People Convention weekly news and opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. I'm the host of this podcast, and I'm also the president of the We the People Convention organization. This podcast, our website, our text messages, our emails, our social media, and our donations to other conservative groups like True the Vote, PragerU, Daily Wire, just Tea Party Patriots, on and on, are all paid for through the generous donations of the donors to the We the People Convention. And if you have the means to be able to donate, we'd appreciate your help in supporting our cause to protect and defend your and my individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. If you go to wethepeopleconvention.org, you can click on the donate link and give what you can. We greatly appreciate your support. That's why for the past 17 years, this organization has had a major impact, even despite the fact that we are not the largest organization out there. You can learn about that by going to wethepeopleconvention.org and clicking on Learn about the We the People Convention, and you'll see how much of a major impact this organization has had because of you, not just your donations, but your actions. And that's what this podcast is about. We're going to, provide a lot of information that is important to your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. And we're going to talk about taking action for each of us to protect and defend that individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's what you're going to get in this podcast. If you've been with us for all these years, thank you sincerely for your continued support. If you're new to the podcast and people join us every week, welcome to you. Welcome to all of you who are looking for, the truth, looking for some guidance, looking for some perspective. That's what you're going to get here. And we thank you for taking your time to join us. I have one housekeeping issue to announce before we get into the podcast, and that is I know that some of you, and it is only some of you, were having problems watching the podcast since the beginning of July. And it was only people who were using iPhones or iPads, not even Mac computers. But the problem was a problem with Apple. And we finally, thanks to your help in reporting, who was having problems, we were able to get it to fix. We were able to fix it, and you should have no problem this week going forward. So we appreciate that. We also want to tell you that this, looking into this problem has caused us to think about perhaps redoing our website. It's been 6 years, and we have a great website, but it's older now, and a lot of things have changed. And so if you have ideas for how we can make our website better or this podcast better, please write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org, info@wethepeopleconvention.org, and start sharing your thoughts about how we can make the website better and how we can make this podcast better and just how we can be a better organization as we move into the fall elections, which are the most critical in our lifetime. So just want to give you that housekeeping note. The problem with the buffering on the podcast has been solved, and it should be fine going forward. So thank you for everybody that reported those problems, and thank you for our technical people who worked very hard to figure out what the heck it was that was doing that. No easy task. So, we're glad we got that done. Okay, so now on to the news of the day, right? And the news of the day, it has to start with the Iran war. And, I'll tell you, it's real simple. We're in it, and we have to be in it to win it. And President Trump, keeps talking about we're going to hit him very hard and stuff. And I really wish he'd stop doing that, because it's kind of like Chicken Little, the sky is falling. We're really, I don't want to hear it anymore. I just want to hear this is what happened. We knocked out X number of sites, and I'd like to hear that we're actually killing somebody. We're using all these munitions. This is war, folks. You win war by killing the bad guys. I'd like to hear more about that, but oh no, you can't talk about killing people in war. It's just stupid. Last week I said to you guys that I proposed that we should use a tactical nuclear weapon on Iran's nuclear facilities, that Pickaxe Mountain and Fordour and whatever those other places are. And I saw a post, where this Iranian, guy was saying, our, centrifuges are buried 300 feet under granite. Your air forces, can't do anything about that. Yeah, but if you drop a tactical nuclear weapon on them, you can't get to them either because the nuclear radiation would prevent that. Anyway, some of you wrote about that. Most of you are supportive, so we'll see. Bottom line is we're in this and Trump has to win it. And you're hearing some things about a kind of a double, action. One is you've got to, as we said weeks ago, you got to shut them off from everything. Their power, their roads, their railroads, food, water. You got to crush them. Okay. And then number two, you got to take out the Iranian Republican Guard, who is basically stopping the quote unquote moderates, the sane people who understand we don't want to die. We want to live, and America's going to kill us if you guys keep doing this. It's a tough situation. Fortunately, the gas prices here are still $3.99, or I paid $3.87 this week. That's kind of a big deal about that. I saw that Chevron announced 400% increase in their income because of the high gas prices, right? And again, the price of a barrel is like $83. I don't think $3.99 is should be the price of gas if the price per a barrel is $83. So there's a lot of shenanigans going on, and markets are being manipulated and all that. So, the report about Iran is that we're in it and we have to fight to win. And President Trump's got to get that done before the midterms. And Larry Kudlow's out there on the Fox Business saying he thinks this is the issue for the midterms. If he wins the war and the Straits of Hormuz are open and oil prices come down, we win the midterms. If we don't, we lose. I don't know if it's that clear cut, but I do know that, this is going to be all in effort. And I'm glad to see President Trump, was at Camp David Friday with his people, looking at attacking Iran's energy infrastructure, now starting to blow up refineries and things like that, which we've been hesitant to do, but I think it has to be done. So here's a couple just quick hits on the war. Iran conflict expands to Egypt with drone strike at Suez tanker. Clearly, what the Iranians are trying to do is broaden the fight. Okay, so they on Wednesday night we launched another heavy round of attacks on Iran, and in response, they launched attacks to its neighbors Thursday, including a Chinese-owned building in Kuwait that killed one person, and another 5 ballistic missiles lobbed at Jordan. But then they also widened to Egypt. An unidentified drone struck 2 ships. Unidentified drone, yeah, whose might that be? Struck 2 ships in the port of Damietta near the Suez Canal, starting fires on board. Reuters said sources familiar with the incident said the primary target attack appears to have been a floating storage and regasification tanker called the Energos Winter, a ship flagged to the Marshall Islands but owned by an American firm called Energos Infrastructure. The freighter reportedly began aboard the Energos Winter after it was struck by a projectile on its starboard side and then spread to a neighboring ship, the Greek-owned liquefied natural gas tanker Gaslog Salem. Egyptian officials said the fires were quickly extinguished, no casualties or severe damage reported, and the port of Damietta has resumed operating at normal capacity after a brief partial shutdown overnight. Okay, so Iran hasn't claimed responsibility, but they're trying to broaden the war. Okay, and the war is broadening from this report. U.S. and Saudi Arabia launched joint strikes on Iran's terror proxies in Iraq in response to drone attacks. So, the question has been, well, when this war started, one of the surprising things to me and a lot of other people was that Iran just went full out after Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, now they're attacking Egypt and Jordan and all the other Muslim countries. And so it's pretty clear that there's no love lost between, Iran and these other Muslim countries. So now Saudi Arabia literally used their air force to attack, but it was a key thing. They attacked some Iranian proxies in Iraq. Okay. So this was a key distinction. U.S. and Saudi Arabia launched joint strikes on Iranian-aligned terrorists in Iraq on Tuesday in response to dozens of Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps direct attacks targeting U.S. forces. American and Saudi fighter jets took out terrorist logistics and weapons sites during the operation, which was launched shortly after U.S. Central Command announced Iran's attempt at a surprise attack on U.S. forces in the Middle East. CENTCOM said the RGC directed more than 30 drone attacks in the last 3 days, all of which were unsuccessful. From February through April 26, through April of 2026, there were more than 600 attempted attacks on U.S. citizens and facilities by Iran-aligned terrorist militia. And then this week, they fired some ballistic missiles in a quote-unquote, a surprise attack that were all shot down. All right. But do you see what they're doing? They're trying to widen the war. And then this story comes out that, you've got to take note of because we've been expecting this and not seeing it. Iran now possibly implicated in Minnesota water systems hack. So what is this? Well, there's been an attack, a cyber attack on water systems in Minnesota, and now people are saying it's Iran doing this. As if things with Iran weren't already complicated enough, there are indications that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard is trying something new in, of all places, Minnesota. Yes, you read that right. The possible intrusion here isn't coming from a bunch of AK-waving goons or explosive-strapped useful idiots. No, this is something more sophisticated. A cyber attack on Minnesota water systems that resulted in water to 30 Minnesota communities being shut down. Between Sunday, July 26th, and Monday, July 27th, a coordinated cyber attack disrupted water and wastewater utility operations across more than 30 communities in Minnesota. 4 cities publicly disclosed attacks in Branham, Plymouth, South St. Paul, and Maple Plain. Minnesota IT Services described the incident as a coordinated cyber attack targeting technology at community water systems across the state. In Bahram, a community of approximately 1,700 people, the attack disabled computer operating controls and temporarily shut down the city well and water treatment plant. Public works crews restored the plant with approximately 2 hours. In Plymouth, with a population of approximately 80,000, that's a bigger city, the city's IT division disconnected cellular-connected equipment at 2 water towers and multiple wastewater lift stations to stop the attack and prevent the retargeting while equipment was reconfigured. In all confirmed cases, officials said drinking water quality was not affected and no boil water advices were issued. Anyway, federal and state officials not publicly attributed the Minnesota attack to any specific actor. However, the operational pattern is consistent with Cyber A3 Avengers threat ecosystem, a state-directed group the U.S. government has formally attributed to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard. In February 2024, the Treasury Department sanctioned this group. Okay, so it makes sense that Iran would try to do this. It also shows you that they're not as capable as we have always been led to believe, right? These people are so brilliant, they're going to, poison your water. That was a pretty pathetic attack. But it shows we're at war. Now, President Trump said on Friday he doesn't think Iran had anything to do with it. They got bigger problems than the water in Minnesota. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But just, it is a signal that we could be personally affected. You and I could be personally affected as this war goes on, and these people want to kill us, and we need to kill them first. Okay? That's just the bottom line. Now, this was kind of an interesting thing that out of the blue, this just comes up. Trump announces Hamas disarmament agreement. Okay? And I'm like, what? what is this? And, President Trump on Thursday announced a historic agreement for the complete disarmament of Hamas and all other armed groups in Gaza. The diplomatic breakthrough brokered by his Board of Peace. Now, that's the group of countries that Trump got together to figure out how to restore Gaza without without Hamas's control, right? And so this is an achievement. Alongside the brokered by the Board of Peace, alongside mediators Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, will pave the way for a new Palestinian government in Gaza, Trump said. The Board of Peace reached a historic agreement for complete disarmament of Hamas and all other armed groups in Gaza. This is a monumental step towards lasting peace and security, Trump said in a Truth Social post. The agreement represents a milestone in implementing Trump's 20-point plan, a framework introduced last year aimed at ending the war and rebuilding Gaza. The president said the multi-phase disarmament agreement marks a critical step towards Gaza being governed by a new Palestinian government with the support of the Board of Peace. He added the city will no longer be used as a base for terrorist attacks, and a new police force will be established in Gaza with the support of International Stabilization Force, keeping the region safe for its residents and its neighbors. Israeli forces would withdraw from the region as the disarmament process moves towards these structured phases. Now, right away, Israel said, yeah, this ain't going to work. They said, yeah, this is just going to put another military force on our border. Okay. I don't know, but people keep doubting Trump and he keeps delivering. Nobody thought he could do anything with Gaza, and they're making progress. And when we defeat Iran, and we will defeat Iran, then the whole Middle East is transformed. And we talked about Trump's talking to Saudi Arabia about helping them develop nuclear power if they join the Abraham Accords. So, yeah, there's a lot of doubt and uncertainty. And domestically, the war is not popular, but, realists understand that it has to be fought. And there's an end to it that's a positive end and is good for America. It is America first to get out of the Middle East quagmire that we've been in for all of my lives. Okay? So that's kind of, the deal. But then you see this thing that happened in Spain. Okay? Spain migrant crisis surges as thousands swim across the border from Morocco because the idiot socialist, commie leader of Spain follows the Joe Biden model and says, oh, immigration is great. Okay. So what happens? Yeah. 60,000 people come across the border in 2 days. It's just insane. Here's a picture of it. You've seen it, I'm sure. Multiple thousands of migrants have streamed onto Spanish territory from Morocco in a matter of days, taking advantage of a new loophole after their Supreme Court ruled that ordering police to stop resisting migrants who came by sea. The Supreme Court, the idiot woke Supreme Court, said, oh, if they're swimming in the water, you can't stop them like you can if they're crossing a wall or a border. The water's not a border. And so what happens? The Moroccan government just stops their police from letting people go into the water, okay? And all these gangs and stuff recruited 60,000. All of them are military-aged men, okay? No women, no children, no nothing. 60,000 18 to 28-year-old men go from Morocco to Spain, okay? It was insane. The local government of Ceuta, a tiny slice of North Africa, is an enclave of Spanish territory, otherwise surrounded by Morocco and the Mediterranean, has called on the national government in Madrid to declare a national emergency, deploy the army, and close the border as the city is overwhelmed by an enormous migrant wave. 60,000, people, came into the city, okay, and just flooded it. And there's no food. There's no water. There's no nothing, okay? And so everybody was making a big deal and saying, if the Democrats win and the Democratic Socialists win, they can win crap, by the way, okay? They're a tiny minority. They're the boogeyman that the Republicans are going to use to scare people to voting for them. I get it, but they're not the threat that anybody wants them to make them out to be. But if they ever got in power, they're going to do this to our country again. And they would, okay? But we're not going to let that happen. And so, it became, this big poster child for what's wrong with Europe. A column of armored vehicles has been deployed, and there are said to be about 3,000 Spanish troops in the city. They basically, the community like doubled in size, right, in one day. Now, this morning, I read an AP story that says that most of them went back that within 24 hours. So I don't know if that's legit or not. I tried to figure, it's Associated Press, so I don't think they'd be totally wrong. So I'm not sure kind of what's going on here, but it just shows you that the European Union is in serious trouble because France and those people start saying, holy cow, we have this thing in Europe, in the EU, and Spain's an EU member, that if you're from Spain, you can just travel into France or, Germany or wherever you want without question. And they start saying, whoa, we got to stop these people. Okay? So, this is what Trump, he took advantage of the situation to say, this is what I warned you about. This is the end of your countries. And right now, something like 32% of people aged 30 and under in Spain are not Spanish. 32%. That's just, that's deadly to the culture. And oh, by the way, Spain has the lowest birth rate of any country in Europe. They're going to go extinct. They're going to disappear because of bad government. That's why you do what you do, I do what I do, we do collectively what we do to fight for our country, to defend our nationalism, right? To put America first. That's why we do what we do. That's why you're watching this podcast, to make sure that doesn't happen again here. It should have never happened in the first place, okay? And now that's why we support ICE, and that's why we got to get these 50 million people out of our country. Okay. A couple more, things about, international affairs, which is the opposite. Usually we do that in the second half of the show, but this is, what we have to do. Senate votes to advance Russian sanction bill in Graham's name. Okay, so Lindsey Graham dies the night he comes home from Ukraine to tell Zelensky that they're going to get this bill passed. Senators voted overwhelmingly Tuesday night to advance a sweeping Russian sanction bill that Senator Lindsey Graham had long sought to move forward before his unexpected death. The vote came shortly after Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky addressed senators on Capitol Hill and followed the funeral of the South Carolina senator. The bill sanctions Russian leaders personally, billionaire oligarchs from Russia, sanctions their money, its energy sector, and its shadow fleet, which provides, oil and weapons and things to Iran. Okay, it would also extend certain sanctions on Iran, a last-minute addition after lawmakers struck a deal to expand the scope of the legislation earlier Tuesday with President Trump. So Russian sanctions and Iran sanctions, which are bill. The bill had 62 co-sponsors. It's widely expected to pass, but the Democrats want to push back on the legislation over concerns that it grants Trump wider tariff authority. The bill has broad bipartisan support and the White House blessing, but the Democrats don't want Trump to have any more power to put tariffs on like China and people like that who are helping Iran. So that was a big step forward. And so this indicates something that we haven't addressed that I thought I should address quickly here. The great MAGA reversal on Ukraine, how helping Zelensky became America first, okay? You and I, we want to stay out of this war. It was their war. We did not like the hundreds of billions of dollars of aid that Lindsey Graham was helping make, of our tax dollars going to Ukraine to fight this war. President Trump stopped that. Now he makes the EU buy the weapons from us, and then they have to give them to Ukraine. So it's not costing us any money, okay? But things have changed. All right. And so why have they changed? Since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the MAGAverse is mostly yawned in indifference. A small minority of MAGA adjacent personalities, including Tucker Carlson, Tim Pool, Laura Loomer, actively promoted pro-Russia's propaganda, but most of us failed to see the relevance. It was unclear how this border squabble between ex-Russian republics mattered to the America First in general. Okay. It's not that we were pro-Russian. We just didn't, it wasn't our fight. And it shouldn't have happened. And then you get into all the stuff about, well, here's the Europeans, it's their fight and they're not fighting it. Then, you got tie that into the whole Russia, Ukraine, the Ukraine Biden fiasco, where they're bribing Hunter Biden and Joe Biden to give them money. And then they use that to impeach Trump. And we're like, screw this, man. We're not interested in any of it. So what changed? What changed? Well, the problem was we didn't see any interest in Ukraine until the Iran war. And then we get in the Iran war and we're seeing what Russia's seeing is here are these cheap drones that Iran manufactures are making it hard for the U.S. to win the war. And Ukraine has become drone manufacturing central. Ukraine flipped the equation, becoming the world's leading expert in drone warfare. The nature of war has evolved. Again, low-cost drones are a game changer. They've wrecked the Russian economy and stopped the number 2 military in the world dead in its tracks. No small thing. Drone warfare, coupled with AI, has been just as revolutionary as the machine gun. As much of a game changer as it already is, we've only scratched the surface. And he who masters this new technology will own the future. The lesson from the Iran war are still unfolding, but one of them is the folly of firing multi-million-dollar Patriot missiles at $10,000 drones. That works okay in limited engagements, but over time it's unsustainable. Even when we win, we lose economically. So we're facing that and we're acting on that. And we've got our own drone technology from Anduril and places like that. Ukraine drone know-how plus American manufacturing base represents an unbeatable 1-2 punch. This necessity is the mother of invention. Ukraine's drone know-how forged in the furnace of hell is the best in the world. And accessing this technology is 100% America first. Okay? So now, let me make a clean distinction. The drone warfare has kept Russia from winning the war, but Zelensky himself has said Ukraine can't defeat Russia with just drones. Okay? So he wants peace. What these Iran sanctions, and Russian sanctions the Senate just voted for will hopefully cripple Russia enough that they will come to the table and sue for peace. That's what we're trying to do with this. But it's in our best interest now to be behind Ukraine. Now, Trump, when he saw Zelensky at the NATO meeting or whatever the hell it was last month, said he's going to let them manufacture Patriot missiles. Well, this week he kind of backed out on that. So we're not all in, but we're in because it's in our best interest. Just needed you to know that. Okay. So now let's move forward, kind of getting a little closer to domestic, but still international, because every one of you who've watched this podcast for 17 years know that I have said to you from day one, the enemy is China. Everything that's happening in our country is because China has been at war with us for 30 years. And we pretended we're not at war with them because they bribed all of our officials, okay? And they've used this really ingenious propaganda campaign to bring trans here, to do the feminist movement, to destroy families, okay? To destroy, our communities, our churches. It's all China paid for. You can find that at WeThePeopleConvention.org, right? So Trump had his little press conference about, hey, the election integrity issue is a big problem and China's the big guy, right? Well, yeah, because they released previously classified U.S. government documents that show China interfered in the 2020 election, and they tried in 2016. And I'm telling you right now, they've been doing it for decades, but now the proof is finally coming out. U.S. spy chief equates China's targeting of American voter files to election interference. Okay? The White House on Thursday released a statement from its spy agency chiefs making clear that China's targeting of American voter registration files that began during the 2020 election likely meets the intelligence community's definition of election interference, unless you're working for the communist Joe Biden, Barack Obama, departments, and then it's not election interference. It's called, fair play, that we can cheat and steal your elections, right? So that's what's coming out now. The facts sheet approved by the chiefs of the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and Homeland Security Department followed President Trump's declassification of documents in July 16th speech, exposing weaknesses in the U.S. election systems, ranging from voting machine vulnerabilities to non-citizens making it illegal onto our state voter rolls, making illegals on our voting rolls. Those declassified documents, as spy chiefs noted on Thursday's fact sheet, include the intelligence community official definition for election interference, which includes a foreign power targeting voter registration infrastructure or data. Election interference includes overt and covert influence activities of foreign governments or actors serving as agents of or on the behalf of foreign governments intended to affect directly or indirectly a U.S. election. Okay? Under that definition used by these foreign intelligence agencies, China's acquisition of U.S. voter registration constitutes election interference. The statement also noted that when China acquired 220 million American voter registration records, it bought, stole, or hacked the data and obtained non-public information that could be commercially bought, but they also used that in social media to influence the vote. They affected our elections. All right? That's just the bottom line. That's the truth. Now, how deep that goes, you're seeing if you're on X, if you're on Facebook, if you're on social media, I hope you're seeing tons of stories taking apart all these files. Catherine Herridge has been doing a great job of a former CBS reporter who they threw out because she was telling the truth, okay? Is it exposing that Barack Obama committed treason? It's right there that the DOJ, the FBI committed treason. They overthrew our government. They rigged the 2020 election, okay? The evidence is there and it's coming out. And yes, we haven't seen enough done about that. I've got a story in the second half that's going to talk about why and how this is going to happen. But it's all coming out. And that's important because you need to share those things with people who just blew it off, didn't think it was important. So I made a big deal out of this story because, again, it just ties to what the Chinese Communist Party has been doing in the United States with impunity until Donald Trump came along, right? This is Natalie Winters, who works with Steve Bannon in the War Room and as their White House correspondents. She had this big story that exposes a list of U.S. media members who are Chinese operatives. I'm not kidding. Go to WeThePeopleConvention.org and read this because she names the names. And then it's not nobody, okay? This just in. China's not a friend of the United States. They may be a trading partner, but they are not our friends. And to them, we are their mortal enemies. Now, as further proof of that, we can point to evidence that the Chinese Communist Party may have been paying for complimentary news coverage from quite a laundry list of America's legacy media figures. Not may have been. She gives you the evidence. They did. The media members admit that they went to China. They went to China to be indoctrinated. Natalie Winters is a Washington correspondent for the Bannon War Room. On Monday, with now less than 100 days until the midterm elections, Winters has broken quite the story. It seems America legacy media members have been taking trips funded by the Chinese Communist Party to China in return, of course, for favorable reporting, for lying to you and me about China. This is quite an assertion, and Natalie Winters has quite the list of names that go with it. Ezra Klein from the New York Times, Matthew Yglesias, Vox co-founder, Ronald Brownstein, CNN senior political analyst, Bradford Plummer, New York Times reporter, Marjorie Miller, former Associated Press vice president, Steve Clemens, former The Hill editor-at-large, David Rode, MS Now senior national security reporter, Jonathan Alter, NBC News and MSNBC political analyst, David Sweeney, former NPR managing editor, Daniel Gross, former Yahoo financial columnist. That's just a sample. There's a link that takes you to the whole list. And this, your cast, and cast your optics over the media outlets implicated. New York Times, CNN, Associated Press, The Hill, MSNBC, NBC, all of them. Do you understand how this whole thing has happened in our country? The Chinese, I told you before, when George Bush Sr. and those guys brought China into the international World Bank and World Economic Forum and into letting them be like all the rest of the countries, they thought, and then they exported all our manufacturing from the Midwest and from the United States to China. They thought they would give up their communist goals and become more democratic and more like us. And we know what the Chinese did? Chinese have been around for thousands of years. We've been around for 250 years, okay? China's a very complicated country. They figured out very quickly that all those capitalists are greedy and they can be bribed. And that's what they did. They bribed Joe Biden. They brought, Catherine Herridge reports that Joe Biden, literally, they were blackmailing Hunter and Joe Biden. The Chinese were. She's got the documents. Go look it up. Okay, they've paid Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. What did he do? Honeymoon in China. Went and took youth kid basketball teams or whatever to China. Spent all his time in China. Think that's an accident? That's a plan. So now Natalie Winters exposes that virtually all the major media were going to China to be indoctrinated and then write positive stories. And that's why you never heard that we were at war with China, because China prevented it. And you were lied to, okay? To summarize, the American legacy media has been penetrated and co-opted at some pretty high levels by the Chinese Communist Party, and this is a pretty big deal. And you need to share this story with everyone you know who thinks that, CNN and MSNBC and ABC and CBS and the New York Times, they're Americans. They love us. In the article, she shows examples of how the Chinese brought them there, lied to them, showed them only the good things, and then they came back and they wrote articles about how anyone who thinks China's our enemy is a fool. This is how it's done. Here's the part that's wrong. Here's the part that's the problem. Where was the CIA? Where was the NSA? Where were our spy agencies? Where was the FBI and the DOJ? Not fighting this. Why? Because they were compromised too. Because Brennan is a frickin' commie. And he ran these agencies. That's a fact. And Obama and those guys wanted them to do it. Remember, Hillary and Bill Clinton gave the Chinese the technology for 2-stage ICBMs in exchange for their help in getting reelected. Go look it up. We always bring receipts. You're here to get the truth. The truth is we're in a mortal battle with China. Can you say data centers and AI? And they want to kill you. And they wouldn't hesitate a second in doing so. And our government is part of the conspiracy. Joe Biden. How about Newscom? Look at the stories that are breaking about Newscom and how much money the Chinese gave him and his family. Look at Eric Swalwell. Look at the California guys. Our government has been bribed and bought, including senators and congressmen, to help China destroy our country. And that's why, by the way, I just did this story about the media being flown to China and to be indoctrinated. Yeah, I saw this morning that the DSA members are now talking about how they're getting flown to China, and the Chinese are ecstatic that they're running for office and helping to destabilize the United States. Okay? It's a plan. It's war. And we were losing until you and I gave everything we had to elect Donald Trump in 2016 and again in 2020 and again in 2024 to save our nation. From who? The commies. That's from who? All right. On to some domestic stuff now, okay? Because again, how did they do it? They stole elections. And that's our biggest problem. Stop the steal, right? That's our biggest problem. Appeals court upholds block on Trump order to tighten mail-in voting citizen verification, right? So they sure as hell can't have that. We can't have, the states have to verify that everyone on their voter rolls is a U.S. citizen, even though the Constitution and the law say only citizens can vote in U.S. elections, right? Or no, we can't have that. President Donald Trump's executive order aimed at tightening mail-in voting rules in 23 states and the District of Columbia cannot be implemented, a federal appeals court ruled on July 25th. In a 2-1 ruling upheld a lower judge's decision to block the order, dealing a blow to Trump's election integrity efforts ahead of the November midterms as Republicans seek to hold on slim majorities in both chambers of the Congress. No, we hope to increase our majorities to be larger this fall. We ain't fighting to stay even. We're fighting to win. You and I are fighting to win, okay? The undisputed summary judgment record indicates that where the executive order to take effect for the elections taking place in September and November, it would sow confusion and threaten disenfranchisement of many eligible voters. The majority of the judges, 2 of the 3 judges on the U.S. Court of Appeals in the First Circuit said in the decision, okay? Well, that's fine. They're wrong. That's just woke garbage, okay? So what happens next? Republican AGs file an emergency order. Republican states asked Supreme Court to restore Trump's election integrity order. Florida and 11 other states say the challenge to the order by the Democrat-led states is premature and lacks standing. In other words, the woke courts have always stopped us when we're challenging things if it hasn't gone into effect. Because if there's no harm, if you can't prove that there's been harm, you don't have standing. These states don't have standing, and that's what the Republicans are saying. Republican-led states on July 29th filed an emergency application to the Supreme Court seeking to reinstate key parts of President Donald Trump's executive order on election integrity that a federal district judge blocked. The states argued that Massachusetts-based judge was wrong to block the president's efforts to verify potential U.S. Voter citizenship and tighten mail ballot security ahead of November elections. Trump's executive order dated March 31st aimed to clarify mail-in voting rules across the country, basically saying the post office will not deliver a ballot to someone who you can't prove is a U.S. citizen. Oh, what a drastic thing that is, huh? Okay. So basically, they're trying to get it, the new, filing by Alabama, Florida, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, and Texas. Yeah, where's Ohio, by the way? Yeah, where's the Ohio AG that DeWine placed? Oh, yeah, he's not interested in this, right? Yeah, he's not interested in stopping cheating because Mike DeWine's a damn Democrat who likes the cheating, okay? The 12 states argued the challenges that California and other states brought to the executive order is premature, that those states lack legal standing, that the injunction will cause irreparable harm by preventing election safeguards from taking effect this year. Okay, the application described the judge's order as a bizarre injunction prohibiting federal agencies from implementing executive order. The executive order imposes no direct obligations on states or the public, but merely instructs federal agencies to consider potential reforms furthering the president's policy goal, bolstering election integrity. It's painfully obvious that the Democrat-led states challenging this executive order are not at risk of suffering a legally recognized injury from the order. The order will impose zero obligation on any state and makes clear that compliance with the states is optional. I think they're going to win this. I hope the Supreme Court takes it up. You better hope the Supreme Court takes it up. And I ask you to pray for that. This is big. This is important stuff. Okay. This is another important case. Okay. American First Legal. This is, the legal firm that now I can't remember his name. American First Legal takes Census case to the Supreme Court of the United States. Okay, Miller. Okay, the guy who's Trump's big guy who we love. All right. Today, American First Legal filed a notice of appeal invoking the U.S. Supreme Court's mandatory jurisdiction and special direct appeal process to review the Middle District of Florida ordering AFL's complaint in its challenge to the 2020 census. Two of the judges, the three-panel judge panel, voted against this thing. Basically, what they're doing is they're challenging the 2020 census, which the census itself admitted was screwed. It was skewed and screwed. It gave too many House seats to Democrats and because remember, Trump was president and the people in the census wouldn't follow his orders. He was telling them, you need to ask, which has been asked for decades in the past, if you're a citizen or not. And the Democrats went to court and stopped it, and they never asked the question. Okay. So they filed this lawsuit. It was thrown out in Florida, and now they basically voted, they've filed an appeal to make sure that we can fix the census before 2030. Because again, they're cheating with illegal voters. And that's why we got to fight these lawsuits. Okay. So that was a big deal. I also want to thank all of you. Every text I sent out this week at the end said, call John Thune, and had his phone number. And we've been beating the heck out of the Senate to pass the Save America Act, to basically pass this reconciliation that has money for the military to help pay for the munitions for the Iran war. It's got the SAVE Act. It's got some other things in it. All right. And Thune is saying they're going to go home for August recess. You got to keep calling. We need the SAVE Act passed. And if Thune won't do it, he needs to be removed. I don't know if we're going to win this fight. I don't know if we can win this fight because the rhinos, who obviously, and the Democrats, remember, another poll came out this week. Everybody wants to say that. Everyone in America agrees that you should have to prove you're a citizen to register, and you should have to show a photo ID that says you are who you are to vote. That's simple. That's simple. Why can't we get it passed? Why will 0 Democrats, except for maybe Fetterman, not vote for this? Because they're cheating. They know they're cheating. They're admitting they're cheating, and the Republicans know they're cheating. And the Republicans, the rhinos like McConnell, who I don't know if he's alive or not, okay, and Tillis and those guys, they don't care if they lose the Senate. They don't care if the Democrat Socialists of America take over a country because they're all got rich from the Chinese. They've all gotten their money, okay? They think they're going to be safe. Yeah, go study what happens when communists take over a country. Who gets killed first? Yeah, just a memo to you rhino Republicans, okay? Anyway, thanks for your calls. Thanks for your effort. Keep it up, all right? Now, I'm going to go into the Fauci thing, all right? And I was going to do hardly anything on it. You know why? Because nothing really happened until he's being arrested and charged. It's not news, right? That's the way I felt. And I'm sure many of you felt that way. But then this morning, I thought, okay, I've got to do a few things. So I'm going to play a sequence of like 1-minute videos here and talk about the whole Fauci thing, okay? Because I think there's some things we need to keep in perspective and remember. So let me just say this. The weirdest part about the Fauci thing is he's getting ready to testify, and we're being told he can't take the fifth because he's been pardoned, even though his pardon's a joke, and we'll talk about that. But then his diary comes out days before he's going to testify. This idiot was keeping a diary on a government server. And Rand Paul gets word of it and releases it, and it just It blows up everything he ever said. It proves that he perjures himself hundreds of times. In this diary, he knows it was from the Wuhan lab. He knows he funded it. He knows 6 feet distance doesn't work. He knows that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine work. He knows he lied about everything. And now he's going to go testify. And what does he do? He takes the fifth 100 times. It was bizarre, okay? But it was useful to basically show that this guy's a criminal, even though apparently we can't prosecute him. And there's some talk about that, okay? And the people who are co-conspirators, those Chinese influenced media outlets, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Hill, the MSNBC, CNN. Yeah, even though they didn't cover it, nothing to see here. Yeah, this is important for you to share. So I'm going to walk through some things, okay? And the first thing I'm going to do is play a video from our good friend and longtime partner, Jenny Beth Martin from Tea Party Patriots. Jenny Beth and I, met each other in the first months of the Tea Party movement, and we've stayed connected. And she put this out, and I wanted to play this.
Just over 6 years ago, Dr. Simone Gold and I stood in front of the Supreme Court with Dr. Joe Ladapo, about a dozen other doctors, and Congressman Ralph Norman. We were warning that the lockdowns and the mandates related to COVID might well have consequences and side effects that were much worse than the actual disease for healthy individuals. These doctors told Americans that they were able to treat the symptoms and urged people not to be so afraid and to have hope, because doctors were learning more about the disease and able to treat it and to help people survive. Our video went viral, and then we were censored. We were mocked, we were maligned, and we were attacked. But we never backed down. We knew there needed to be a second opinion, and we knew that Americans deserve better than what we were seeing from so many in our government, like Dr. Fauci. Today, Dr. Fauci will be in a congressional hearing chaired by Senator Rand Paul.
All right. So I wanted to play that because I wanted to remind all of you that we did fight. We did fight, and we did not stop. And this hearing is part of a result of that. Our organization, this guy right here, Tom Zawistowski, was the number one person who went after Mike DeWine and Amy Acton when they destroyed Ohio over this hoax. We fought them tooth and nail and never backed down. And I want you to be proud of that. I want you to remember that. I want you to know that you were right. Just read the Fauci diary. You were right about everything. You were right not to take it. You were right to fight. Even if you lost your job, you were right. And this is a partial vindication. It's nowhere near enough, okay? So I'm going to play, some other things. Now, many of you, heard about my senator, Bernie Moreno, who this organization played a big role in electing, okay? And he addressed Tony Fauci with some vulgarities, okay? And he was right. And I'm glad that he did. And I wrote him and I thanked him, because I got news for you. Every one of his constituents would have used the same language against Tony Fauci. But I'm going to play this clip because I think it's more reflective of what this hearing was about. This is Bernie Moreno, after that other outburst.
Can you do me a favor in the audience and stand up if during the time of the COVID pandemic, you were called a racist for calling the virus a Wuhan virus or the China virus? If you thought the 6-foot rule was total crap, if you thought the vaccine wasn't something that you should take, if you thought it was outrageous the way the mask policy was rolled out, if you were fired from your job for not taking that vaccine, including members of the military, if you thought closing schools was catastrophically stupid, and that you thought that during these times saying these things made you somehow a lesser human being? Dr. Fauci, can you just turn around and look at the people behind you? You're not willing to do that? That's not a question. It's not a question. To your lawyers, not a question. It's a request. All you have to do is look up from your lawyers and look at the people who were absolutely shamed for saying what we know now to be the truth. You can't even look at them?
There you have it. And that was a great, compilation of what was done to American people. That needed to be said. You need to share that. People need to understand this is unforgivable. Fauci is Joseph Mengele. I'm not kidding. This is as evil as it gets. His diary is damning. And this can't be the end of the story. And there are, Rand Paul is saying that they're going to, because again, do you have a pardon or don't you? If you have a pardon, you can't take the fifth, but he took the fifth. I think that could be evidence that shows he doesn't have a pardon. We're going to talk about that because I got a real problem with Trump on this, okay? But now they're saying they might hold him in contempt, and that'd be great. I don't care. Everything you can do. But now I want to go back and I want to show you how vicious this was and how the Chinese paid media operatives were all about. This is all about Trump. This wasn't about the vaccine. This was about stealing the presidency. Never forget that. Here's some proof.
Dr. Atlas, okay, a guy with no pandemic experience. He literally would know more if he stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. He's saying, hey, you in Michigan, these measures to help try to control the spread, fight back. Are you kidding me? Shame on you. What kind of doctor would tell people to rise up and resist the only kind of prophylaxis that can help them? What the hell is the matter with this person? Rise up. You rise up and do your job or get the hell out. How could you give this kind of advice? Of course, Fauci was being measured. He says, I don't agree with his position. This isn't Fauci's fight. The science is obvious. This is about Trump and the Trumpers. He's going to have his main health guy stand up and say, fight back against the regulations to keep you safe.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. This is about the Trumpers. It's about you. Remember, Dr. Atlas knew what he was doing. He and Jay Bhattacharya and those guys were fighting this with real science. And this moron, this liar, comes on and is berating him and saying he's unqualified when Bricks and Fauci were jokes, right? And they're trying to save us, and President Trump is trying to act, but these people were paid by China to stop it so that Trump would lose, so that you would die, your mother, your friends would die. That's what the Chinese want, okay? That's how bad it was. Don't forget that. Share that. So this was really good to see this week. Watch this little clip.
There was so much talk that they don't want you to take ivermectin. Ivermectin is the way to go. Take it. Joe Rogan got better from ivermectin. And by the way, I don't like what people did to Joe Rogan about ivermectin. I don't like it.
You did it.
No. Okay,
Yeah, you did.
Find the clips.
Dude, find the clips. You shamed Joe Rogan.
Find the
you
clips.
said he's taking horse dewormer. You and Don Lemon were chuckling at each other about it.
No,
I'll go find
first
the
of all,
clip.
you just saw the clips.
I watched it.
I'm not chuckling. I'm listening to Don. But
No. The
here's
clip
point.
I'm talking about wasn't on there, and
Here's-
it's absolutely
look, we
there.
were
Here, do we have it? Hold on. Let's play the clip.
Go ahead.
Injecting drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to. What person? You talk about cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer, Really?
They are shaming themselves.
That's
No
what
one
it
has to
is.
shame them. They're shaming themselves.
No, they need to
So
be
you're
shamed.
taking a
They need to be
dewormer right
called
now,
out.
Chris.
Shamed.
Chris,
It's a
you can't
dewormer.
apologize for that. You weren't being clear that it was
All
this,
right.
and you know that, dude. You're being so dishonest right now, man.
I'm not
You
being
were
dishonest.
talking about ivermectin, the drug. You were not talking about
I
this version of ivermectin. Come on, man.
How's that? Hold them accountable. Share that. Share that video clip, right? Because it's clear as a bell. Ivermectin worked. We knew it worked. It was the safest drug in the world. And Fauci made sure you couldn't use it because if you could, they couldn't do the vaccine. Remember? Billions of dollars at stake. Yeah. Where are the arrests of all the drug executives who hid information? They didn't get pardons. They didn't get pardons. What the hell? This is not even close to enough. Not even close enough. And so I'm going to finish with this clip with Joe Rogan this week.
I think the mismanagement and the overall strategy for dealing with it and dealing with people, the lockdowns, keeping kids out of school, masking, all of it was so bad. It's so indefensible that one of the wildest things now is during this Fauci trial, you're not seeing any coverage of it on mainstream media, except I saw one of those stupid panel shows on CNN where they were saying, no one cares about this. We should care about what's happening right now. America doesn't care about what happened 5 years ago. Hey, there's a congressional hearing going on where a guy's testifying in front of Congress who got a 10-year, complete 10-year immunity for all the crimes that he possibly could have committed when he wasn't convicted of any crimes, which is an incredible precedent that's never happened before. You've never had a guy get pardoned for something that he was never convicted of for 10 years, anything he did in 10 years. And then you have that same guy testifying in front of Congress, pleading the fifth that what color his tie is. If you don't think that's news, you're out of your fucking mind, and you shouldn't be calling yourself the news because you're just a propaganda arm for whatever pharmaceutical company is paying for your advertisements. What you're doing is nonsense.
Yeah, you're being paid by China. You're being paid to gaslight the American people. You and I cannot allow this. You have to share this podcast. You have to share this segment in our chapters player. You can choose just this segment, copy the link, and send it to people. You need to make sure people understand what was done to us and what is being done to us now. And you need to continue to fight for justice. Because we cannot allow this to just, it was 5 years ago. It killed 7 million people globally, but just forget about that. No. So there was good news about Florida. Right after the hearings, the Florida AG announced his investigation into Fauci since his pardon isn't for state charges. All right. So that's a good story. Anthony Fauci, former director of National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, received the pardon courtesy of Joe Biden's auto pen, but that may not be enough. Basically, the Florida Attorney General, James Ottmeyer, evidently was keeping an eye on the proceedings because after the hearing on Wednesday, he posted on X, Fauci's lack of candor to Congress is unbelievable. My office is launching an investigation into Dr. Fauci. It's past time we get to the truth about what happened during COVID. This announcement is a potential game changer because of Ottmeyer does end up uncovering evidence leading to charges against Fauci. The Biden pardon would not protect Fauci. Senator Rand Paul did warn Fauci that the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee would be voting on whether to hold him in contempt of Congress, which would result in up to a year in prison. But unfortunately, Senate Republicans usually do not ultimately allow to follow through on such threats. So it would be great to have at least a chance for Florida and I think other states to bring him to justice. Now, I heard that basically Paul is making sure that all the evidence they have is going to be given to Florida to find out if what Fauci did, harmed Florida residents, which it clearly did, and prosecute him, right? My question is, why isn't there an international reckoning on this? Why isn't there a Nuremberg trial for all these people who lied, about everything involving COVID globally. You know why? You know why there isn't? Because all the woke European governments were in on it. They all wanted Trump gone. They wanted Trump gone. And they were willing to kill 7 million people and injure how many other tens of millions of people to do it. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. And we can't allow this. And so I was really disturbed, okay, when this story came out. Trump just said what he will do about Biden's auto pen pardon for Fauci. Listen to what he says. President Donald Trump on Wednesday said he would not challenge former President Joe Biden's partner, former infectious disease official, Dr. Anthony Fauci, after a Senate hearing in which the doctor repeatedly refused to answer questions about the COVID-19 pandemic. While speaking with reporters at the White House, Trump said, the most powerful thing the president has is the power of the pardon. So he was pardoned by Biden, and I respect that. You respect that? Trump continued, I know how powerful it is. It's very powerful. They say it's literally the most powerful thing a president has. Now, whether or not I sign my things directly, almost everything I sign directly, well, maybe not. Maybe you've got some auto pen things. President Trump, do you? The president went on to cast doubt on the notion that Biden signed all of his pardons and suggested many were signed using an auto pen without his knowledge. He acknowledged that even if Biden signed Fauci's pardon with an auto pen, it would have been impossible to prove. You need to have letters. You need to have all sorts of things that the person operating the auto pen has to know exactly what it's all about. He didn't know what it was about because I saw him testify. So maybe there's something on the auto pen. Other than that, the power of pardon is very powerful. President says he will respect Joe Biden's pardon, but it would be too difficult to prove. The most powerful thing the president has is the pardon, Trump said. The pardon covered by any possible federal offenses tied to his work from 2014 through the date it was issued. Biden said he took this step because Fauci and other political servants faced threats of politically driven investigations and prosecutions. He stressed that the pardon did not mean Fauci had done anything wrong. Fauci accepted it, saying the threat had caused great stress for him and his family, even though he insisted he committed no crimes. Okay? So I got two questions, President Trump. First of all, you're dead wrong on this. And I ask all of you to go to whitehouse.gov/contacts and write to President Trump and demand that he challenge these pardons on two key fronts. Number one, as Rogan just said to you, it is unprecedented to pardon someone who isn't convicted of a crime. You must challenge this on that basis alone. Hunter Biden was pardoned for things he wasn't charged with. That's unprecedented. That isn't a pardon. That's a cover-up. President Trump, you need to take this to the Supreme Court. That is not a pardon. Okay? Second of all, you have to challenge it because it's auto pen. It's not the president. And guess what I said to you when Fauci took the fifth? Wasn't he admitting that he doesn't have a pardon? Isn't that an admission that his pardon is illegitimate? Shouldn't you use that and say, if it's a real pardon, why did Fauci's attorneys have him plead the fifth? Why did he plead the fifth? My God, man, this guy's a mass murderer. This reminds me of after we chanted lock her up at every frickin' Trump rally in 2016, and he said he would, and then he got elected president and said, oh, I'm not going to go after the Clintons. They're good people. I went to Chelsea's wedding. The hell? The hell? This man killed our family members. They destroyed your presidency. They damaged our country. It led to millions of illegals being brought into our country to destroy it permanently. And you're not going to follow up? The hell you're not. I think that it deserves a note to the president. I think you should I'm going to let my feelings be known pretty damn loudly. That's disgusting. And I don't appreciate it. And it sure as hell isn't America first. So I guess maybe I need to take a break. So let's take a break. Went a little long in this first half. A lot of stuff to cover. Anyway, appreciate you being with us. I hope you will write to the president. I hope you will take action about Thune and the SAVE Act and continue to fight that fight, okay? I hope you will continue to fight for our freedom and liberty, because that's what we're fighting for. And I hope you will share. I ask you to share the stories about, the media being bought by the Chinese, and everyone that your friends are listening to are lying to them then and now. Okay? Share that. And then we'll be back with the second half of the show where we've got a lot more stuff that you'll want to share. Okay? Thank you for listening. You've been listening to the We the People Convention Weekly News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and we'll be back after these messages. When you're playing a video, including our podcast, you'll see this little cloud button. And if you click it, it'll actually download the video to your hard disk. And this works on our podcast page as well. If you're playing our podcast, and it's going to be loud, so I won't play it for much, but there's our podcast playing, and you can see this little download button. Okay. The other thing you got to notice on our podcast page is that there's a link here where you can send me a message about this podcast. Hey, it was great. Hey, I didn't like it. Something was wrong, or here's a correction, that kind of thing. You can use that link. And then these are the stories that I covered in this particular podcast. And you'll see there's links that go to the stories, to the articles that I used in reporting on that. So you can click on that. You'll also see that you can sign up for our emails and text messages, but you can also watch our podcast on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV. And these are the instructions for doing that. So this is all on our podcast page, right on the front page where the yellow button was. If you click there, this is our podcast page. These are the instructions for watching on Roku TV or Amazon Fire. And I watch our podcast on TV. It just feels more comfortable. So you can do that. We're also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you should join Rumble. And it's Tom Z at WTPC. You'll see our podcast there. So you can get us a lot of different ways, including on Apple iTunes. And then this is an audio version of our podcast. If you click here, it'll just play the audio of the podcast. It will not, show you the video. So people can, listen to that while they're jogging or, working out, working in the yard, or just relaxing and just want to listen to the audio and not watch the video. And again, this is available on phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, on your computer, any way you want. And you can share this, whatever you see. If you're on a page that you really like, and you see an article that you think, geez, I've got to share this article, with someone in my family. You can send them an email by clicking on the little envelope. You can post it on Parler or MeWe. If you click on this, you get all kinds of options, where you can put it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, which we don't support, but you can do whatever you want. So we ask that you share what you see on our We the People Convention site, and that you get more people to look at it, because that's the whole idea here, to help educate people, inform them. And then, as I said before, Link, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And in my podcast every week, which is published every Saturday. So if the new podcast usually comes out every Saturday. And in that podcast, I will ask you to do certain things that will help protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's the We the People Convention website. Come back often, use it to be informed, and share it with others. Thanks a lot. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org, or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. All right, and we're back with the second half of the podcast. I got a little emotional there at the end of the first half, and I think you can understand why. It's just not acceptable. And what's also not acceptable is you give me this dog and pony show of, we're going to bring Fauci in to testify, but you're not going after. In his diary, he is corresponding with all kinds of other government and medical officials about the conspiracy, who are covering it up, who are squashing things, who are censoring the truth. Why aren't you going after them, Rand Paul? Why aren't you going after them, Kash Patel and Blanche and the DOJ? Why aren't you going after everyone who did this? Why aren't you going after the media people who knowingly told untruths and killed people? I have a right to be angry about that. You have a right to be angry about that. We need to do something about that. And that means scream as loud as we can at anyone who will listen and demand that they take action. That's why you share this podcast. You'll be able to share that segment of this podcast separately. You can write to the president, call your congressman, call your senator, call your state AGs. Say, why aren't you doing what Florida's doing? How many people in your state died? What did they do for you? Nothing. Fight, fight, fight. President Trump sent him that graphic. Fight, fight, fight means you don't let mass murderers get away with it. You don't let that happen. And don't tell me you can't do it, because you can. You're not. All right. So we're going to get on with the second half of the podcast. There's lots of, things going on. And again, we talked in the first half about that they want to cheat. The only way the Democrats have anywhere near these 15 states that they run, they got half the Senate, half the House, is because they cheat. That's why they're trying to stop us from fixing the cheating. That's why they're filing these court cases and stuff. And we just saw proof that they cheated, because after Trump disclosed all this classified data that said the Chinese interfered and the election was stolen and the evidence is there that the FBI, DOJ knew, the moron governor of New Jersey who lied when she ran for office exposed it. They have 6,600 illegals on their voter rolls, right? But New Jersey rejects the DOJ's request for records of these non-citizen voters, right? They're refusing to hand over the information to the DOJ involving a voter registration error, which the vendor says is not an error, that allowed thousands of non-citizens to register to vote. So why wouldn't you turn it over? Oh, privacy. Yeah, privacy. New Jersey is refusing to hand over information to the U.S. Department of Justice involving voter registration error that allowed thousands of non-citizens to register to vote in the state. The DOJ requests in full names, dates of birth, nationalities, residential addresses, and registration dates and locations of the 6,600 people involved in the error. New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill rejected the request for the data, saying in a letter on July 28th that state and federal privacy laws prohibit releasing it. No, they don't. They don't. That's bull. It's a public record. You can go on the computer in New Jersey and check them, but you can't give them to the DOJ to prove whether they're citizens or not. The request has no legal basis, and I will always protect New Jerseyans' personally identifiable information, except for from the Chinese, right, Mikey? Anyway, Harmit Dillon, the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights of the Division of the DOJ, said the governor's refusal to cooperate with federal law enforcement does nothing to protect law-abiding New Jersey citizens. New Jersey has a legal duty to keep ineligible voters off its rolls. They obviously did not. Our request is grounded in that legal authority. DOJ will get this information through all legal means, okay? Sherrill said on July 21st that approximately 6,600 people who indicated they were not U.S. citizens were mistakenly registered to vote because of a software flaw. According to Sherrill, the error affected applicants between June 2023 and June 2024 during the previous administration. While applying for driver's licenses, which the Democrats push for motor voter, let's register people at the motor vehicles department who knows nothing about registering people to vote. Let's do that. While applying for a driver's license, the individuals selected no when asked on a keypad whether they were U.S. citizens, but they were nevertheless added to the voter rolls. And the vendor said, the company that worked for the New Jersey motor vehicles for more than 40 years suggested the New Jersey government was responsible for the non-government placement, non-citizens placement on the voter rolls because they were told that they were doing that. They lied, okay? So then there was a story out this week where they said, well, geez, New Jersey, how do you verify? Because remember, what Harmeet Dillon, what President Trump's order says is that DHS, okay, Homeland Security, Social Security Administration are going to look at everyone who's a citizen. If you're a citizen, you have a Social Security card. If you became a citizen, you do that through Homeland Security, okay? So combined, they create this database that has every American citizen in it. They're giving it to you free, every state free, and saying, compare your voter rolls with this. And then they're telling the post office, they're giving it to the post office, and they're saying, if they try to mail a ballot to anyone who's not a citizen, you don't have to deliver it. That's all they're doing. They're fighting that tooth and nail because they cheat and they know they're cheating. Okay? And here's another way we know they're cheating. This is from our friend at the Conservative Treehouse, Sundance, right? Great website, conservativetreehouse.org. He has a story. The scale of ineligible people called for jury duty starts to highlight the number of illegal aliens currently on the voter rolls in New Jersey. Right? In most states, the jury duty summons process comes from the registered voter rolls. As a consequence, when a person is called for jury duty and then is disqualified as a non-citizen, we have another way to judge the scale of non-citizens on the voter rolls. Right? Okay. About 75,000 non-citizens are summoned for jury duty in New Jersey each year based on data from 3 state government agencies, including the Motor Vehicle Commission. A stunning figure that widens the scope of a growing controversy over government databases that may incorrectly identify non-citizens as eligible voters and jurors. So New Jersey is saying, oh, it's 6,000. Now remember, before Trump releases these documents, every Democrat has been saying for decades, oh, there's no evidence that illegals are on the voter rolls. There's no evidence that they vote, right? And then Trump releases the declassified documents, which shows that's not true. And then New Jersey goes, oh, well, 6,600 illegals were on our voter rolls. And, oh, yeah, 400 of them voted. But we won't tell you who they were or how they voted, right? And then it says 75,000 were called for jury duty and rejected because they weren't citizens. Well, prospective jurors are asked about their citizenship and other qualifications when they complete the mandatory jury qualification questionnaire. Those who advance are reminded of the eligibility required during jury orientation are directly questioned about their citizenship during jury selection. Okay? The revelation of non-citizens making their way into jury pools comes 3 days after Cheryl alleged that a software glitch allowed 6,600 people to register. Folks, it is literally tens of millions. When Joe Biden supposedly got more votes than Barack Obama and 11 million votes more than Donald Trump, those are all phony. Those are all fake. And it's going to be proven. Okay, and when they can't do that, they will cease to exist. And this November, we will win the war, and the Democrat, now socialist, commie party will go the way of the Whigs and cease to exist because they're not real. It's all phony. It's all phony. And speaking of phony, oh yeah, Mamdani election bombshell. More fraudulent votes cast than the margin of Mamdani's victory, says election auditor. I've been on conference calls with this woman. She's very smart, very smart. She knows what she's doing. A prominent election integrity activist has uncovered bombshell evidence suggesting that New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani's 2025 election victory may not have been legitimate. Marley Hornick, the founder of Real America Vote, a great organization, and New York Citizens Audit, has suggested that the 2025 election included large numbers of unqualified or non-existent voters. But that's only part of the problem. I actually don't know whether Mamdani won the mayoral race, and I'm not here to say that he didn't, Harnack said during a July 22nd interview on New York radio station WABC. The problem was uncovered is that the New York City and New York State Board of Elections have no idea if Mamdani won the election either, and that's where the rubber meets the road. After examining 1 million of the 2.2 million voters who participated in the mayoral election, her organization discovered that 7% were non-existent in records, 6% had fake Social Security numbers, and 10% didn't even live in New York City. In total, they identified 230,000 illegal votes, which exceeds Mamdani's 207,000 vote margin of victory over former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who ran as an independent. Do you think Mamdani's win was fair and free of fraud? And this was despite Harnack needing to review the remaining 1.2 million votes. Okay, so out of 2.2 million voters, we studied about 1 million of them, and we found more votes that are apparently illegal than his margin of victory. Again, the issue is not whether or not Mamdani won. The issue is whether or not the Board of Elections in New York is actually counting fair elections so that we are properly represented as we are constitutionally granted. Okay, she suggested that the boards of elections may be guilty of crimes. They are. They're cheating. Mamdani's illegitimate. He should be deported, okay? That's the fight we're in, and we're against this evil, all right? All right, we'll get off of that. Got a series of now more random stories, okay, that'll move a little quicker. You and I have been fighting, particularly here in Ohio, but in Florida, other states, about property taxes. We're just getting killed by property tax, particularly here in Ohio, where they went up by like 30%. For no reason after COVID, okay? So all of our property tax constitutional amendments are to do what? Stop taking our money to fund what? Police agencies, fire, other government agencies, libraries, school districts, whatever, and say to the states, you've got to find another way to fund these. Oh, well, the police unions are sounding the alarm over property tax proposals. The International Union of Police Associations strongly opposes the proposed constitutional amendment to reduce or eliminate local property tax revenues without first providing a permanent, reliable replacement to fund essential public safety services. Property taxes are the financial backbone of law enforcement, local law enforcement, fire protection, emergency medical services, and other critical government functions. Removing that revenue without a guaranteed alternative places every community at risk. Public safety is not an experiment. It is irresponsible to ask voters to approve a constitutional amendment that could weaken police protection, increase emergency response times, and undermine the ability of local governments to recruit, train, and equip first responders. The International Union supports responsible tax relief. We do not support shifting the financial burden on the backs of law enforcement officers and the communities they serve. Florida citizens deserve tax reform that protects both taxpayers and public safety. Until a fully funded replacement plan is presented, the International Union of Police Associations joins many other public safety organizations in opposition and urges voters to reject the proposal in Florida. Okay, now get this, okay? They say they're for reasonable reforms. What they really say is, cut everybody else but not us. We don't want to give a dime. We don't want to give anything back. And as I told Vivek Ramaswamy here in Ohio, you got to understand, the property tax reform bill that this organization laid on a platter in front of him, that was not a total repeal. It was about a 9% cut across the board. What it's about is not just saving individual homeowners on their property tax. It's about having the leverage to force police departments and fire departments and libraries and townships and everybody else to try to govern more efficiently. But they don't want that. They don't want that because it's always more. Do you notice that with all this technology, all these flock cameras, right? We're doing a story about the flock cameras, and this is a big fight about our privacy. Yeah, they're spending all this money on new technology that says it's helping us solve crimes. Do you notice that they don't have any less policemen? Do you notice that they aren't cutting anybody? They're just spending more money. It's always more, more, more. That's the problem. That's what property tax reform is about. And I urge the people in every state to keep pushing, because if we don't find a way to force these people to cut duplicate services, stupid services, to cut out all the DEI crap, everything, we're doomed. Again, when you're paying more than 50% of your income to the government, you are not free. You are a slave. That's what they want. It should be 20%. It used to be. And when we cut all this fraud, maybe we'll get closer to that. But I thought I'd share that story with you. Two stories that are going to really set me off, set you off, okay? Because like with Fauci, like with all the people who were in the government who let the millions in through the borders, who knew what the law was and broke our laws intentionally, who haven't been charged. Like all the people in the medical world that haven't been charged with the COVID thing. All right. All the hospital executives who made millions killing your relatives, okay, haven't been charged. I'm sick and tired of people, of the bad actors, not just getting away with it, getting rewarded. Anthony Fauci is rich as can be. He is the highest paid government employee. Well, let me introduce you to another guy who's supposedly a government employee, who's a POS, who's destroying our country. Yeah, Smithsonian exec who said DEI must be at the center of institutions is raking in an eye-popping salary, okay? This guy, Lonnie Bunch III from the Smithsonian Institution. There's a picture of him right there, okay? This guy, Lonnie Bunch III, the Smithsonian Institution's secretary, who called DE&I an integral to excellence in museum practice, raked in over $4.4 million from 2020 to 24 in base salary and added benefits, a Fox News Digital Review found. Well, the Smithsonian funds executive compensation through a private trust revenues to comply with federal pay caps. So in other words, we're paying him what the federal pay caps say, and then we have this private trust that adds more money, because, boy, you sure couldn't get anybody to run the Smithsonian if you didn't pay them $1 million a year, right? Okay? The high dollar package could draw fresh scrutiny because federal taxpayers still fund roughly 60% of the institution's overall budget. During his tenure, Bunch has championed the sweeping transformation of the institution's cultural footprint, starting during the 2019 interview with Smithsonian Magazine, stating that he wanted the Smithsonian to make diversity and inclusion so central that it no longer was talked about, right? The thing that's destroying our country, that got rid of merit, that rewarded people based on their gender, their skin color, but not their competency, that needed to become the standard. We call ourselves the great convener, but we're really a great legitimizer. And I want the Smithsonian to legitimize important issues, whether it's the 1619 Project, which is a piece of hokum, garbage, or climate change, which is another piece of hokum garbage. Bunch said, referring to the controversial 1619 Project that's been repeatedly slammed by scholars. He said, we help people think about what's important, and they should debate what they should embrace. Everybody that thought about the 1619 Project, whether they liked it or disagreed with it, saw that the Smithsonian had its fingerprints on it. And that, to me, was a great victory. We paid this guy $1 million a year to lie to our citizens, to our children, to teachers, to institutions about our country. As secretary, Bunch reports the organization's board of regents and oversees the Smithsonian's 21 museums, 21 libraries, the National Zoo, and several research centers within the organization. Bunch's current salary is not public. It doesn't matter. In addition to that interview, he co-wrote a policy framework resource titled Excellence and DEAI, an acronym for Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion, which was written for the American Alliance of Museums. He co-wrote this. He former elaborated on his views on diversity in a 17-page document which says the museum should embed responsibility and accountability for implementing these lies. We should embed, you will be held accountable if you don't push DEI. They put it into our taxpayer-funded history museums. Why isn't he fired now? I talked to you last week about the woman who testified in front of Congress and had no regrets about what she did to the Smithsonian. And I said, President Trump needs to fire. And I asked you to write to President Trump and ask him to fire, and I did that. This guy needs to go too. Don't tell me that President Trump can't fire them. The Supreme Court just said, if you're in the executive branch, you can be fired. So he's not, he's in his job. He's smiling. They're still destroying our country, and we're letting them. We're at war. They're the enemy. He's a damn commie bastard. And so then here's another one in the same vein in the private sector. Cracker Barrel to pay for outgoing CEO security, $4.6 million severance after failed rebrand. We fought for Cracker Barrel. Nan and I like Cracker Barrel. It was a screw up to try to rebrand it and make it woke. We pushed back. We won that fight. It survived. Its business is down, but it's actually building back now. So they're right to fire her. They give her $4.6 million as a failure. Isn't there any clause in your employment contract that says, hey, your stupid actions cost us $100 million in losses, and you're being fired for gross incompetency, and let's go to court and see how much you win. Oh, no. The company disclosed, their agreement filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission that Messina will receive $4.6 million over the 2 years following the end of her employment, and that they will pay for her protected services for a reasonable period of time after the end of the advisory role. He said the chairman of the company thanked her for her service and said, she was really committed to her leadership and commitment to Cracker Barrel. Really? Really? You're the person that's on the board of this company. You hired this person who destroyed hundreds of millions of dollars of your capital, and now you're going to thank her. Thank you very much. Can I have another? Yeah. We're just dumb as a box of rocks. We got to stop it. You can't reward the bad guys. The whole reason we learned, all of you and I learned, right? If we did something wrong, our parents gave us a spanking, particularly after we were told and we still did it, right? If we screwed up at work, we got fired or we got suspended or we had a financial penalty. If we make a bad decision in our life, we pay for it. That's what made America great. We've undermined all of it with DEI, and it's not my fault. You're a black kid. You can't succeed in this country because white people are actively working to stop you, except our country's full of black multi-millionaire NBA players who don't deserve what they get either. Okay. This has been a tough podcast. I'm sorry. I didn't expect it to be this way, but I don't know. You're just hearing the truth. This is just what I believe. You can write to me, info@wethepeopleconvention.org. Tell me you disagree, whatever. Okay, let's get on to some better stuff. Supreme Senate confirms Jay Clayton as Director of National Intelligence. This is the replacement, that we needed for Tulsi Gabbard, okay? So the Senate, has confirmed Clayton. He was nominated by President Donald Trump to be the next director in July 28th. They voted for this. Clayton, and let's see. Clayton was ultimately confirmed by 51 senators supporting to 47 against. Following the confirmation, Clayton will replace DNI Bill Pulti, who was criticized by top Democratic senators, including Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Previously decided Pulti is unqualified. Okay, so this Pulti guy. Let me get myself. So the Senate confirmed Clayton, but now they don't want Pulti. They don't want him to take over for Pulti because Pulti has been really doing a good job taking out the deep state. Acting DNI, who Clayton is going to replace, fires more deep state officials. He fired 50 more deep staters. Trump put Pulti in there before Clayton got approved by the Senate to clean house. This is the fourth round of filing since becoming acting director of national intelligence. Our team has been smartly and carefully reducing the size of the Department of National Intelligence, refocusing on national security, the law, and the statutes. As of this evening, we just finished our fourth round of thoughtful, measured layoffs. Thank you, he said on X. So that was a good thing. So they've confirmed his replacement, but then, we've gotten these people out. So when his replacement comes in, they'll be more loyal to the Trump agenda in our government because we elected Trump to change things. And these people are there through every president and they think they're the president. Now they're jobless. Good. Get them out. Okay. Then, of course, you've got the rhinos who don't like Donald Trump, and they're trying to stop him every way they can. So Senators Cornyn, who Trump didn't endorse and lost big in his Senate primary, and Tillis, who's out, isn't running, blocked Todd Blanche from AG confirmation. Okay? Republican Senators John Cornyn and Tom Tillis are refusing to support acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who was President Trump's lawyer and is doing a good job at DOJ, from full Senate confirmation. President Trump notes he will not accept the threats and blackmail from both outgoing senators and will renominate Blanche if needed after the two senators are removed from office in November. And so in January, Blanche is acting. He can stay acting through January. And then when they're thrown out, when they're not longer in the Senate, he'll renominate them, and then we'll get it passed. That's the way you play. That's the way you do it, President Trump. Thank you for that. That's excellent. I told you earlier in the podcast that I would kind of give you an update on why you're not seeing as many people as we know should be charged with crimes. And I've been screaming about that in this podcast. So this story, I think you're going to appreciate. I appreciated it, okay? Russiagate prosecutor calls audible on grand conspiracy. So this is from Paul Sperry from Real Clear Wire. Although Donald Trump's defenders describe the Russia hoax and other efforts to frame the president as a grand conspiracy, Real Clear investigations learned that the man now leading the probe of that scandal is pursuing multiple conspiracy prosecutions that are smaller and more manageable, according to several sources. Since taking over the Department of Justice far-flung investigation in April, veteran prosecutor Joseph DeGenova and his team quickly concluded that combining all of the alleged wrongdoings, which range from falsifying evidence, committing perjury to leaking classified information, obstruction of justice, into one unified plot and trying to get them together as a single case would be unmanageable. You'd have 50 defendants in the courtroom, said a well-placed source familiar with DeGenova's thinking. Before DeGenova took over the investigation 2 months ago, its contours were ill-defined as it lurched ahead in fits and starts for more than a year. But according to sources, DeGenova is tackling the case with a new, disciplined focus, and is doing so is giving the direction it lacked. But this is a change in tactics, not the theory of the case. The sources say his operating assumption is that Trump's enemies in the 2016 Hillary campaign, the Obama and Biden administrations, some Democrats in Congress, and their like-minded accomplices have across several government agencies, including the CIA and the FBI, joined in one continuous conspiracy over almost a decade to deny Trump his civil rights, derail his political campaign, and undermine his presidency. Whether other investigators whether other investigators have looked at specific pieces of the effort Trump defenders now call Russiagate after its original origins, DeGenova is launching the first holistic look at the entire scandal. A well-placed source says is looking at events from June 2015, when Trump first came down the golden escalator to announce his candidacy, through 2022 FBI raid at Mar-a-Lago as he left office. Insider sources provide the Real Clear Investigations with an exclusive look into specially assigned prosecutor's office and its requisite legal maneuvers. So, since most of the government alleged corruption, anti-Trump activity took place in 2016, prosecution of the case as conspiracies is the only way to get around these statutes of limitations, which is 5 years. Okay? They said 2 separate grand juries in South Florida are now collecting and hearing evidence in what could become a series of conspiracy cases brought against people who served in the highest reaches of government, including former CIA Director John Brennan, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, and former FBI Director James Comey. Okay? So they're building these cases. They've got multiple grand juries. Okay? DeGenova moved into his office in Fort Pierce, Florida, and his team are confident that the jury pool and judges in South Florida will give them a fairer hearing as opposed to Washington, D.C., where they are no longer utilizing a third grand jury. It's dead in D.C. Everything is South Florida now. A former federal prosecutor and independent counselor, defendant is known for using grand juries, which are comprised of 16 to 23 citizens who hear prosecutors' cases to aggressively collect evidence by issuing subpoenas for documents and witnesses. The sources say a fresh round of grand jury subpoenas is expected to go out here this month. Okay? So this is key. I have had conversations with Joe DeGenova. I had talked to him when Trump fired Sessions as AG. Our organization was pushing Trump to pick Joe DeGenova to be the Attorney General. And that would have been huge. And I talked to him about that, and he said he would do it. And I worked with General Flynn to try to influence Trump. And instead, he picked Deep Stater Barr, right? He picked Bill Barr, who completely betrayed him and who completely was party to the cover-up of the 2020 elections, where he said there's nothing to see, and he stopped the FBI and DOJ from investigating the election fraud. Yeah, I think it would be absolute irony to see Joe DeGenova actually charge Bill Barr for election interference or something like that. That would be awesome. I hope that makes you feel better. I know that's not the answer we all want. We want handcuffs, orange jumpsuits, trials. We win this election. I think that happens. I think this is proof that it's moving. It's huge. Trump, it's huge. There's hundreds of people that need to be arrested, thousands perhaps. This is the biggest crime in the history of our country, and China's behind all of it. I hope you're getting the picture, and I hope you can share that with others. Okay, a couple more things. We're all focused on Biden. We're all focused on Fauci and his diary. In the middle of all this, what comes out? A court finally rules that the audio tapes of Biden's discussions with his book ghostwriter come out. Quote, I just found all this classified stuff. Bombshell audio, confession rocks Biden case. Okay? This was where we were trying to get when they were going after Trump for having classified information in Mar-a-Lago, which as president, he has complete authority to declassify, and he did, and that was absolutely illegal. Joe Biden, who was a senator, has no authority to declassify anything, is sitting in his house with thousands of classified documents, and but they're not going to charge him. President Joe Biden just stepped in it. His damning audio confessions that I just found all that classified stuff downstairs was revealed to the world in a recently released ghostwriter tapes. The startling admission dates to February 2017 audio recording, which is a month after he left the White House as vice president. No wonder the Biden team was fighting so hard to keep the tapes from going public. Special counsel Robert Hur declined to charge the president for illegally retaining the stored classified materials. He famously concluded, have also considered that at trial, Mr. Biden would likely would likely present himself to a jury, as he did during our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Based on our direct interactions and observations of him, he is someone for whom many jurors will want to identify a reasonable doubt. That's not your decision. Your decision as the prosecutor is, did he break the law? And then you take him to court and you let the jury decide. They didn't do that because it's fixed, it's rigged, and they protected him. It's just insane. And now you have these diaries. This is 2017, before he's running against Trump in 2020. He's totally out of it. He can't, it's audio tapes where he can't remember his staff's names. It's horrific. Don't tell me they didn't know. Don't tell me they didn't put Scranton Joe up to lie to you, put him in his basement to protect us against COVID. Remember the press conferences where they had little circles with the media? Do you see the depth of the conspiracy? Now you can hear it. That's what that's all about. You can look at that article on our website. This is good news for those of you who are concerned, and I am concerned about the fall, because the Republicans are, without passing the SAVE Act and other things they're doing on data centers and property taxes and stuff, are hurting our chances. But this is good news. Elon Musk rides to the GOP's midterm rescue, okay? Elon Musk, a mercurial trillionaire, is planning another massive cash binge on behalf of GOP's midterm campaign that might just be enough to keep the Republicans in power in the House and Senate. Musk dropped $260 million to help elect Donald Trump in 2024, and then his GOP super PAC committee had $300 million to basically invest in this fall. The Republican National Committee maintains a massive cash-on-hand lead over Democrats' National Committee, holding roughly $100 million and more cash. The pro-GOP and Trump-aligned industry groups added significant firepower, including $170 million in crypto-focused super PAC funding and upward $100 million pledged by tech AI interests. Strategic interests estimate the combined overall Republican cash on hand edged from over $500 million to $600 million. That's no small thing. Now, again, Kamala Harris had more money and lost, so it's not just about the money. But Musk was smart. If you remember, in 2024, he went to Pennsylvania. Remember, he paid people to go out and knock door to door. America PAC will focus on door knocking, digital advertising, and direct mail, aimed at turning out the conservative base, including voters who typically are less inclined to cast ballots in a non-presidential election. Musk representatives declined to specify exactly how much he'd spend, but given what he's doing in 2024, the next is expected to be high. So that's a good thing, okay? Maybe you're going to be able to get some help by that on your efforts. I'm now telling people that I think our only message for this fall, and I would ask you to share this, is that you don't have to vote for Republicans. You have to vote for yourself. Your job is to vote in your and my best personal interest. What is in our best personal interest? Our best personal interest is to elect every Republican with a pulse. Doesn't matter what their policies are, doesn't matter how they voted, doesn't matter if they're MAGA, doesn't matter. It's in our best personal interest because we have a historic chance to literally destroy the Democrat Communist Party. We need to do that. Therefore, it is in our personal best interest to vote for every Republican, and then after they're elected and the Democrats are less of a threat, then we'll go after the rhinos, then we'll go after the radical Islamists. Okay? Your message to everyone is, forget about the Republicans. Yep, we hate them. They don't do what they say. They've lied to us. They won't pass the SAVE Act. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we have a chance to destroy the Democrat Communist Party for all of history, and we need to do that by voting for ourselves, for our own best personal interests. I hope that will resonate with you. Let me know if it doesn't. Let me know if you have a better idea. Write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. Okay? All right. More good news. DEI gets its pink slip. Trump dumps race-based federal hiring rules. Well, we can't apparently get rid of it in the Smithsonian, but maybe we can get rid of it here. Okay. What did Trump do? The Trump administration is pulling a 1978 desperate impact framework out of federal hiring regulations and eliminating rules that required agencies to apply it to job tests and other employment standards. The Office of Personnel Management, Russ Vaught, issued an interim final rule Thursday removing references to the Uniform Guideline on Employee Selection Procedures from several civil service regulations. The rule is scheduled for publication Friday, when it will take effect, following a 60-day public comment period. The guidelines were jointly adopted, for the Labor Department, the Justice Department, all these other groups. And it deletes the guidelines where regulation governing general employment practices said you got to use disparate impact claims when you're hiring people. You got to hire this person because we don't have enough of these, race, creed, gender, whatever. That's gone. Yay. Good job. We appreciate it. Trump had a personal legal victory that's not insignificant. Trump scores a major victory against the New York Times. Remember, he sued them for lying about him and his family and hurting his business. And they did, and they're guilty. And they've been trying to get out from under that for a long time. Trump announced that U.S. District Court Judge Stephen Merday denied a request for dismissal from the New York Times for the $15 billion lawsuit against the Times for alleged defamation of Trump and his business career across a decade. As we requested, the highly respected judge has called for an updated complaint, which will lay out in extreme detail all the ways in which the Times has repeatedly and consistently acted with actual malice in defaming me, my family, our great MAGA movement, and America itself. Trump said on Truth Social, we will continue to hold the Times and their comrades in the mainstream media accountable for publishing, promoting, and dealing in fake news. Should Trump be successful, the $15 billion valuation for the Trump legal team has indicated that damage would be worth more than the entire market capitalization of the New York Times itself, which is worth $12 billion. Literally, he could put the New York Times out of business. We hope that happens. We look forward to that day. This was a press conference Trump had this Friday that was really great. Trump promotes Freedom Haulers initiative to fast-track military veterans into trucking jobs. So we got all these illegals in New York and California are giving them driver's license when they can't read or speak English. They can't read the road signs. They're killing American citizens on our highways. Okay, they're illegal. They're non-citizens. They're not qualified. And Trump comes up with a great idea. If you were in the military, they have all these big trucks that you learn how to drive. Let's make them truck drivers. The program streamlines CDL licensing for veterans with military driving experience as an administration tests crackdown on illegal immigrant commercial drivers. President Donald Trump on Thursday formally kicked off an administrative initiative designed to fast-track military veterans into trucking jobs while removing illegal immigrants. Speaking at the White House alongside Transportation Secretary Sean Diffrey, Veterans Affairs Secretary Doug Collins, and trucking industry leaders, Trump promoted the Freedom Haulers Initiative, which streamlines the process. Today, we're taking action to get illegal alien truck drivers off the American roads and replace them with proud American vets. It's about time. Great idea. Trump, you can't, I criticize him in this podcast, and I'm allowed to do that, and so are you. But we also praise him because nobody is smarter and comes up with better ideas. That's just absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. This too is absolutely awesome. Okay. Trump, the left is having an absolute meltdown over Trump's plan to nuke DEI bike lanes. Okay. This is a favorite story of mine. In our community, they just took, a couple years ago, we had a major road, 2 lanes each way, and it was getting repaved. And we're like, yay, it's getting repaved. And of course, there's federal money tied to that, right? So what happens? They make it 1 lane each way and put bike lanes. And I've never seen a person on a bike in our area ever, okay, on the roads. And they did this all over the country, wasted billions of dollars of your and my tax money that didn't go to repair bridges and fix airports and roads, right? That was Pete Buttigieg, and everything's racist, and everything's a DEI violation. And you're doing this in black neighborhoods, but not in white neighborhoods. Trump just threw it all out, and the left is losing their minds. It's awesome. Stop this nonsense. Building bike lanes to do what? Oh, that was the Agenda 30 thing. That was the smart cities where we're going to take away your car and make you, ride your bike. So we're going to spend billions of dollars to put in bike paths for no one. And you should shut up and just say, okay. Don't ever shut up and say, okay. Fight, fight, fight. So that was great news. That's a pet peeve of mine. That and roundabouts. I'm no fan of roundabouts, despite the data. Okay. This was other great news. Released the U.S. government policy for stopping high-risk life sciences research. Okay. This is a really important story that got missed. Let me go see if I can find this other graphic for that. Okay. New golden age of science. All right, I'm getting myself tied into two different things. Let me. The first one is the release of the U.S. government policy for stopping high-risk life science research is about Fauci and gain of function. It never made sense to you and I at all that our geniuses felt that we should create deadly viruses that have never been created in nature in case it gets created in nature and would kill millions of people, we would have a vaccine. What? That never made sense. Why would you take our taxpayer money, which Anthony Fauci admits he did in his diary, and then put it in Ukraine, put it in all other countries, put it in China with our mortal enemies and create COVID-19, which was deadly, and then you don't have a vaccine? It was insane, and it needed to be stopped. Well, Jay Bhattacharya is in charge now, and he released this letter. During my confirmation hearings, I pledged the American public that I would implement strong and transparent oversight of NIH-supported research. Today, I am pleased to announce an important milestone in fulfilling that commitment. The federal government has issued the U.S. government policy for stopping high-risk life sciences research. This groundbreaking government-wide policy establishes, for the first time, an explicit prohibition of dangerous gain-of-function research which can significantly endanger American lives and pose substantial risks to our nation's security. The new government-wide policy represents a paradigm shift in federal oversight by adopting a comprehensive, risk-based framework supported by strong enforcement, accountability, and transparency measures. In addition to a ban on federal support for dangerous gain-of-function research, the policy introduces enhanced review and reporting requirements for all life science research, including independent, top-down assessments for projects that may increase the harmful consequences of biological agents. The policy also strengthens global safeguards by instituting new international restrictions, including banning life science research involving certain countries or entities and prohibiting high-risk work in countries lacking adequate oversight. We're done. We're done. We're going to make sure we don't ever do this again. That evil people like Anthony Fauci and all the other people in the NIH and our government healthcare services who profited off of this scheme can ever do it again. Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya. We appreciate it. This was followed up by something that did not get anywhere enough coverage. This is a major ask of the show. I'm asking you to go read this article and then to share it and then to watch the video that's embedded in it. Trump administration reverses decades of anti-science policies. Science, A New Golden Age by Michael Krastiosis, director of OSTP. Okay? What is this about? Folks, this is really, really big. And you won't understand it until you read it and watch the video that I embedded. It will rock your tree. This is huge. White House unveils major reforms in U.S. research policy, redirecting billions from universities to next-gen technologies. The White House has announced plans to shift billions of dollars in federal research, to these other scientists, not to institutions. Detailed in a comprehensive report titled Science, A New Golden Age, authored by Michael Krasosis, Director of White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. The Trump administration presents a radical new blueprint to modernize the nation's scientific infrastructure. The American story is one of boundless creativity and bold ambition. President Donald Trump stated, calling for a golden age of American innovation to cement U.S. dominance over foreign competitors. For 8 decades, since World War II, 80 years, the American federal science funding operated on post-World War II models that prioritize university-based research labs. Now, the new White House report argues this classic model has become hopelessly bogged down and ineffective. Researchers now spend nearly half their working hours navigating university bureaucracies and paperwork rather than conducting actual science. And as you'll hear in this video I embedded, when we give $1 million to a university to study something that the government thinks needs to be studied, the university takes a third of it as a management fee. The department takes a third of it as a management fee, and basically the researchers get a third of it. That ends right now. Researchers now to dismantle these influences, the White House intends to prioritize individual scientists over legacy institutions. By bypassing traditional academic gatekeepers, federal agencies will funnel resources into flexible, fast-track grants, golden ticket selected programs, and alternative mission-driven research organizations, redirecting funds away from the bloated university structures with an overhead towards high-risk, high-reward breakthroughs. Okay, it's going to be highly dependent on AI. At the absolute center of this massive funding realignment is artificial intelligence. The White House plans to re-engineer America's national research enterprises specifically for the AI age, noting that AI will radically accelerate the speed and scientific discovery. A cornerstone of this strategy is the Genesis mission, the nation's flagship AI for Science initiative. This mission aims to fully integrate supercomputers, advanced AI models, scientific instruments, and massive data sets across national laboratories. The goal is ambitious: to double the overall productivity and impact of U.S. science within a decade. So to double the impact of science on your and my life in the U.S. within 10 years. The administration plan reaches beyond abstract research, explicitly tying specific discovery back to physical manufacturing and American workers. Criticizing decades of industrial offshoring, the report notes that discovery without domestic production leaves American taxpayers paying the R&D bill while foreign rivals capture the economic and strategic benefits. To fix this gap, the White House is demanding a reunification of discovery and manufacturing. The administration plans to fund advanced manufacturing, expand registered apprenticeships, and build dense regional innovation hubs across the country. The policy seeks to integrate hands-on technical training into STEM curricula and create national fellowships for skilled craftspeople and technicians. Okay? So now, in the article at We the People Convention Art, you'll see this video. It's a part of a podcast, the Moonshots podcast, what I talk about all the time. And you're going to see another example of next, okay? They do an amazing job of explaining to you what a joke science in America has become since World War II. It was right after World War II. The only places that had the scientists and the technology, the labs, to do high-level science on nuclear energy and on, silicon chips and computers and stuff were universities. That was 50 years ago. Since then, it's garbage. It's another federal waste. This is as bad as the fraud from the illegal immigrants in Minnesota. What these universities are doing with our money is a fraud, okay? And by the way, they use this money that doesn't go to the research to hire woke people to indoctrinate your kids. The universities are losing their minds. They're going to fight this, and their buddies in Congress are going to fight this. This is huge. I'm telling you, you got to watch this video. You got to take this story. You got to take this segment and send it to everyone you know. This is the stuff. When Trump said he's going to make America great again, this is what he's talking about. I can't, I hope I'm getting through to you. I'm not exaggerating. I'm understating it. This story on our website is massive. No one covered it. It was on social media. It was nothing. You got to spread this, man. It's really important. All right. Going to wrap up the podcast. You know, you've gone over 2 hours again, like we did last week, but that's okay. We covered a lot of things. I work hard to tell you the truth. I work hard to argue things that sometimes you don't like, right? We've had this fight on data centers. And, you know, and that's still, that fight is still, I gave you the Mike Rowe video last week. We're still fighting the fight on data centers. We don't know how it's going to come out. We know AI, it's got real bad things. I think it's part of our organization's responsibility to at least open your mind, to give you information, to help you decide, all right? One of the things that I think most of you are against is self-driving cars. We like to drive. We grew up in the age where our first car was freedom, baby, and you drove coast to coast in your Volkswagen Beetle, okay? And that was cool, and that was great, and that was true. But there's a change happening, and the case for self-driving cars and you not owning a car is so economically powerful, I think it's inevitable. Now, you and I, we oldies, we'll still have a car, and we'll still go out for a Sunday drive, but we're also going to take Waymos and Tesla taxis because it'll be cheaper, safer, better. You're saying, Tom, I don't believe you. So I put this up for your benefit. If you think you're against self-driving cars, watch this discussion and decide, okay? It's a video. It's not that long. I think it's 15 minutes, okay? It's a 15-minute video. See if you agree. Watch and make the case. The video starts out with, I'll just give you this one thing. There's lots of stuff in there. The host, Peter Diamandis, says, so Paul Graham, founder of Y Combinator, put out the following tweet, quote, trial lawyers are lobbying against self-driving cars because they're too safe. They need people to be killed and injured so they can have material for lawsuits, he says. Just sit down with that for 1 minute. Right? It's insane. Graham cites a report from the American Association of Justice, which is a trial lawyers' lobby, has been prominent opponent of autonomous vehicle legislation. Here are the numbers, guys. 6.2 million motor vehicle crashes per year, 17,000 a day. 2.4 million people are injured annually, and there are 40,000 traffic deaths per year. 108 people die every day because of car accidents. The safety data from Waymo and Tesla is incredible. The data is very clear. Over 10 million miles of driving. These vehicles will cut down the injuries to wrecks, all of it, by like 90%. By like 90%. They went on to say that 50% of all lawsuits in this country are from auto accidents. That's why the lawyers want it banned. They don't want you to have self-driving cars. The police departments won't be able to write speeding tickets. They won't be able to write speeding tickets. The parking meters. All these people are going to fight against it. But they're not going to win, because when you watch this video and you see the evidence, it only makes sense. And you remember I always say, whatever happened to common sense? Yeah, common sense always wins because it's right and it's good. Okay? I hope this podcast has been full of common sense. I hope you agree with most of it. And if you disagree, write to me, Tom Z, WeThePeopleConvention.org or info@WeThePeopleConvention.org. Tell people about this podcast. Share it. Get people to act on the things that I asked you to act on, to watch that video. Send us your comments at info@WeThePeopleConvention. Send us story ideas. Many of these stories came from the police union against property taxes, came from one of our members, as an example. You know, the stories you don't hear about, you hear it here. That's why you watch this podcast. I greatly appreciate you, taking your time to watch this. But it's important because we can't protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity if we don't know what's going on and we don't know where to fight. If we don't fight for the SAVE Act, right? If we don't support the things that we need to support, like, hey, why isn't your state going after Anthony Fauci and only Florida? Why would you let Donald Trump not go after and challenge Fauci's fake pardon when Fauci and his lawyers didn't think he had a pardon? Write to the president. Demand, whether he likes it or not. He stated his case. He doesn't think we can win. I don't care. Your job is to put America first and to do everything you can. Let the DOJ, let someone in the DOJ make the case. We, the people, want to see it. We want the Supreme Court to say you can pardon someone who didn't commit a crime. I want them to say that and get ridiculed for that. And then we'll pass a law to change it. You can't let it stand, Mr. President. Will you act? Will you write whitehouse.gov/contacts? That's the only way it happens, folks. I can't do it alone. I don't do anything alone. We do it together. We've done everything together for 17 years. And now it's showtime. And you've got to be really serious because we have to win in November. We have to win or we're all done. Our nation's done. Everything you've got is gone. Okay? That's real. Those threats are real. I hope you liked my idea. You don't have to vote for Republicans this election. You're going to vote for yourself. You're going to vote in your best self-interest. And the way you do that is to elect every Republican with a pulse so that we can destroy forever the Democrat Communist Party. That's the goal. That's the challenge. You need to commit yourself to that 1,000%. All right, we're going to wrap up our podcast for this week. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you have a great week. Do fun things. Be a happy warrior. Enjoy the summer, okay? But keep fighting. Keep standing the fight. Keep sharing this information. And just believe that God is behind us and has a plan for us. And whether there's AI or not, I can't believe that God is going to allow AI to be created to destroy us, his creation. I don't believe that. I don't know how it works out. I don't have the answers. God's got a plan, and I trust that. I hope you do too. So have a good week. You've been watching the We the People Convention weekly news and opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. See you next week.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights, oh, the rainbow those unaware, that flag is still there. It's our future to save, this land of the brave, the U.S. of A.